Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Nerdy Movie News Roundup. This is the show where we round up all, and I do mean every single piece of news in the world of nerdy movies. That's a lie. It's just the stuff that I care about. We have actually some really interesting topics to talk about today, so let's just jump right into them. All right, so first up, we have some more clear and direct confirmations about the upcoming Marvel's Wolverine game. This is the PlayStation exclusive Wolverine game developed by Insomniac. It's in the same universe as their Spider-Man games. And one of the things that I've been saying for it for a long time is that I really hope it's not open world. And we're finally getting confirmation that it is not going to be that. So this is the IGN interview with one of the directors, I believe. I think he's the game director, which is, I believe... How do video games work? I think that there's a creative director, which is, I think, the director, but then they also have game directors, who I think are, like, the directors of the gameplay. I don't know. And you know what else? You want to know something else? I don't care. So let's just read what they have to say. IGN. There's a moment in the footage where Wolverine can see the area that he's about to enter into, see enemies moving about, and then leaps into action. But that isn't necessarily a big sandbox area where there's lots of different things going on and you can make lots of different choices about how you're going about it. Would you say that is a fair assessment? Mike Daly responds saying, yeah, I can say we did not set out to make an open world game or a sandbox game. What we really wanted was high octane, high intrigue, linear single-player adventure, and the missions reflect that in their structure. And I think that's the right move. Like, at this point in my life, I kind of don't want a ton more open-world games, if I'm being completely honest. Like, I don't know, man. I don't have that much time to play video games, and I kind of don't want that time being spent just, like, wandering around open worlds, doing a bunch of pointless side missions, and yada, yada, yada. The one open world game that I definitely tolerate, though, is Spider-Man, because swinging around New York City is just incredibly fun. That mode of transportation, I personally think, is worth it, right? Like, swinging to your next mission is a part of the experience. It's a part of the fantasy of being Spider-Man. Some might say the amazing fantasy. Ha! So yeah, Spider-Man, cool, fine, whatever. Wolverine just doesn't have that aura. Wolverine, he's not that guy, okay? I don't want to ride around a motorcycle around an open world, go into my next mission. I don't need to do, side missions as Wolverine where I'm stopping crimes. It's like, I'm good on that. Give me, a Wolverine game should be basically a Naughty Dog game, and it seems like that's what they're aiming for. He also talks about some of the other side characters that will appear in the game. IGN asks, at one point in the gameplay, Jean Grey turns up, which is very exciting. You fight alongside her, and there are co-op combat elements. I noticed what looked like co-op finishers, where you can set enemies up for each other. How does that work exactly? Is this a major element in the game? Will we see this with lots of different characters, or is Jean Grey a one-off? Mike Daly says, when Logan meets up with Jean Grey in the trailer that you saw, they have a common enemy. They naturally work together, and they kind of have to feel this out. Jean Grey is sort of her own hero. She can hold her own, and she operates autonomously. So she'll defend herself, she'll fight enemies, she'll take them out, and when the two of you are close to each other, you'll work together to take out enemies. One of the elements of this that you saw is that Jean can open enemies up to Logan so that it's on the player to listen to Jean, pay attention to her, and see these opportunities for quicker kills. So there is an interactive element to that. They will work together more later on in the game, and Jean can use her telepathy to help Logan in stealth segments as well to give him an edge by dimming enemy perceptions. There are also other allies you fight alongside. We reveal Sabretooth at the end here. In this game, Logan and Sabretooth are actually on a team together. But the way they ally is not really anything like the way you ally with Jean Grey. Logan and Sabretooth have a very competitive dynamic between them, whereas Jean Grey might give you an opportunity to get a kill. With Sabretooth fighting alongside you, it's more like you think you've got a kill, and he rushes in to steal it from you, and their combat banter brings out that dynamic and makes the whole fight more fun. So that's also a kind of an interesting thing. It reminds me a little bit of Guardians of the Galaxy, though, the video game that came out that was surprisingly good, even though it didn't sell a whole ton of copies, where you only played as Star-Lord. And I do remember feeling when I was playing that game, like I understood where they were going for. Like that game was trying to make you play Star-Lord, and they really wanted to sort of immerse you in the feeling of being the leader of a group of characters. And so it really encouraged you to like not play as Drax the Destroyer, not play as Rocket Raccoon, not play as Groot or Gamora, but it really wanted to encourage you to like be a leader and have like commands where you could order people to attack certain enemies. Because the other thing I remember of that game is that Star-Lord kind of sucked. you could punch people and shoot them and stuff, but you didn't actually do that much damage. So you really had to be like, okay, Gamora, I need you to attack this enemy because your attacks are strong against their weakness, and I ended up growing to appreciate that game. But I definitely remembered playing that game being like, okay, I get what you're going for, but I also want to be Rocket Raccoon. Like I want to play as the raccoon. I do wonder if Wolverine is going to have a little bit of that element, because Wolverine's cool, obviously. He's, the most popular X-Man. But I want to be Jean Grey. I don't know if Cyclops shows up. I want to be Cyclops. I want to be Storm. I do wonder if there's going to be an element of that where we're going to be playing the game and it's going to be fun, fighting alongside these characters and doing the like team finisher moves and whatnot. But are we going to feel like, okay, but can I play as the other person? We'll see. But this is obviously a Wolverine solo game, and there were actually some leaks a couple of years ago that basically revealed that Insomniac, after Wolverine, they're doing like a whole ass X-Men trilogy of games. Like this is, it was actually leaked that Insomniac is totally just a Marvel studio at this point. Like they're doing a Venom game, and then Wolverine, and then like 3 X-Men games, and I think you might get 1 Ratchet and Clank in between there, okay? Any Resistance bros out there that are like, I really want Resistance to come back. Sorry, not gonna happen. So it should be noted that we will eventually play as all of these characters that I'm talking about. But I don't know that that's really gonna change the effect of playing Wolverine, having all these other X-Men in here, but not being able to play as them. Okay, and then they also talked about stealth in the game, which is not really something that I think about when I think of Wolverine, if I'm being completely honest. Wolverine and Sabretooth fighting together. Who would have thought it? Okay, that all sounds very cool. The footage we saw there starts with Wolverine stealthing, or at least doing a couple stealth kills. But could you then go on from that and stealth kill your way through the entire combat experience in that section? Or are you eventually forced into straight-up combat? Can you stealth kill your way through the game in these sections? And then the Mike Daly guy says, there are a lot of scenarios in the game where it is not possible to stealth your way all the way through. But generally speaking, when the enemies are unaware of you, there are ways you can get through the whole thing with stealth. Now that being said, being a super stealthy character through and through isn't necessarily our priority for Wolverine. He uses stealth when it's the most efficient way to get the job done rather than it being important that he doesn't get caught, because he doesn't really fear combat. So the choice of stealth or combat is always in the hands of the player. In all those scenarios, he can always jump into combat whenever he wants. Not just that, but in a way, there's kind of a natural encouragement towards it, because when you get stealth kills, it's a great way to pre-build your rage meter in a way that doesn't decay. And so there's a growing incentive to go ahead and make a big splash into combat because you have so much of that momentum behind you already. So we leave that choice to the player, to how they want to get through the combat setup. And usually the ideal route is striking some balance of a little bit of stealth and then finding the right moment to go all out and take out the rest. So yeah, I'm pretty sure the interviewer is asking that because in the Spider-Man games, like there were these combat encounters where you could start off doing it stealthily, but then when you get through like the first wave, it forces you out of stealth and into direct combat. And that really annoys me in the Spider-Man games, because it's just like, if you don't want me to play as stealthily, fine, but why even introduce it in the first place? Like, why are you, like, you don't give me like the choice to do stealth at the beginning if you're not going to allow me to do it all the way through. So I like that, at least based on what he's saying, like, yes, there are going to be encounters where you can't do stealth, but I do appreciate that if they're giving us the choice to do stealth, then give us the choice to do stealth. If you don't want us to do stealth, then don't have stealth in the first place. So yes, and then now in this interview, they bring up other playable characters more directly, kind of what I was talking about earlier, so I guess I'll read through this as well. IGN says, so get a few stealth kills, build up that rage, and then explode into combat in proper Wolverine style. One of the things that you have done in your combat or in your games before is have sections where you play as other characters. Are you Wolverine the whole way through, or are there surprise sequences where you switch things up and you control and play as other characters, as you have done in your Spider-Man games? Mike Daly responds, this game is all about Wolverine, and you play Wolverine the whole way through. We wanted to keep the focus on him throughout the whole story. So yeah, he's basically saying there are not going to be any sections where you play as Miles, or in the first game, you're not going to play as MJ, also in the first and the second game. You're not going to play as Wolverine's deaf girlfriend in a weird deaf side mission. Like in Spider-Man 2. Do you guys remember that? At least according to him, you're not going to have any of those sequences. It's just Wolverine the whole time. Although, weirdly enough, this is like the game where we would want to play as the love interest. Jean Grey, like... No, Jean, Wolverine's girlfriend. We actually do want to play as her this time, Insomniac. It's the non-superpowered one that we didn't want to play as. But yeah, we'll see. Maybe he's lying. Maybe they will let us play as Jean Grey at some point. If they're lying to us about that, I honestly that would be acceptable if they want to keep the surprise. But yeah, then they go on to confirm that it is in the same world as the Spider-Man games, and then they give a bit of a plot synopsis that I kind of want to read. So let's go to that. IGN says, we know that this Wolverine game exists in the same Earth as your Spider-Man games. Does that manifest itself in any way in the game, or is that just an incidental aside? Marcus Smith says, it's correct that it does take place in the 1048 Marvel Universe, which is the Insomniac video game universe. It happens in the same world, but we don't have any crossover. Spider-Man will not be making an appearance in Wolverine. So that is interesting, right? Because they're creating their own cinematic universe. You would think that they would try to interweave it a little bit. Like, you would think that Spider-Man would show up here in some capacity, especially because a video game cinematic universe is so much different from a regular like movie and TV cinematic universe where you have multiple projects a year, so you can sort of choose to have a standalone project where there isn't a ton of crossover. In a video game universe where it takes so long to make these games, you would think that in your first non-Spider-Man game, you would want Spider-Man there. Because who the hell knows when the next installment of your video game cinematic universe is going to be, in order to then have the crossover feel more palpable. So, I don't know. Again, they're saying that Spider-Man isn't going to be in this. I feel like that would be a mistake. I mean, unless there's literally like no way to write it into the story without it feeling forced, I guess. I can respect it in that instance. But just from the point of a video game cinematic universe is interesting. Like, they've not really done that for Marvel or DC. Well, I guess does Suicide Squad count? I don't know. I'm gonna say that doesn't count. A successful one, like this is probably gonna end up being, hasn't really been done before, and I feel like you'd want to capitalize on that more quickly rather than later. So I don't know. We'll see. And then I kind of wanted to read this story synopsis. IGN says, story-wise, what is Wolverine trying to achieve here? What is he setting out to do? Marcus Smith, this is the creative director, says, it's a totally original story. In the beginning, Logan is a member of Team X, but has been gone for a few years and we don't know why. And he comes back and is now on a mission to help mutants around the world. From there, we start tipping into spoilers that I can't get into, but suffice it to say, it's an M-rated game where we want to tell a more emotionally deep storyline. There will be twists and turns, and what he wants in the beginning might not always stay true, and by winning he loses, and by losing he wins, and all of those things that you could expect from a Wolverine story. So that's interesting. So I was doing some reading, and apparently Team X is not the X-Men. Team X is like a CIA Black Ops team for mutants, kind of like what he was a part of in X-Men Origins Wolverine, if you remember that movie. So it's going to be very curious to see, like, has the X-Men, by the time this game comes out, has the X-Men been formed? Is he, like, was he a part of the X-Men in the past and now they fell out or something and now he's a part of Team X? Like, so, like, when Jean Grey comes into play in this game, is it going to be, like, somebody that he's known for a long time from the past when he was a part of the X-Men? Or is Jean Grey going to be in this game as, like, them meeting for the first time? And are we going to sort of, maybe by the end of this game, see the X-Men kind of beginning to form, which then leads into the X-Men proper game that's going to be coming out later on? Gonna be very curious to see how all of that goes. But yeah, Wolverine looks awesome. I'm very excited about it. We'll see if I actually get a PS5 for myself or if I borrow it from my brother-in-law, like when I played Spider-Man 2. We'll see. All right, next up, we have some pretty major updates on the Paramount acquisition of Warner Brothers Discovery. So, one of this whole story has been crazy because at first it seemed like Paramount was going to buy Warner Brothers. Then it seemed like Netflix came in, overbid, and it seemed like they were actually going to be the ones to buy Warner Brothers. Crazy stuff. But then Paramount was like, actually, we actually do have more money to bid with, and we're going to get foreign investment or something, and that, you know, that has its own issues. I guess we wouldn't talk about here. So we're actually going to ultimately win and get the company. So that seemed like how it ended. But now there are some pretty interesting roadblocks that I don't know will necessarily make it be the case that it doesn't happen, or from like a legal perspective of whether or not they are allowed to. But these roadblocks are interesting because I feel like they could end up delaying the deal to the point that Paramount might not think it's worth it anymore. So let's get into it. June 5th, this is coming from Reuters. California, New York, and other U.S. states are preparing a lawsuit to block Paramount Skydance's $110 billion. Sorry, I couldn't highlight this for some reason. Whatever, I'm just going to read it. You know what I'm reading. Of Warner Brothers. Sources familiar with the matter told Reuters on Friday. The lawsuit is expected to be filed in the coming weeks, the sources said. It was not immediately clear which other states would join the lawsuit, which would mark the boldest move yet by the states in their effort to be at the forefront of U.S. antitrust enforcement. So this is the rub. Not all lawsuits seeking to block mergers succeed, but they can delay the consummation of deals by months if a judge issues an order pausing the merger while the case plays out. Paramount has agreed to pay shareholders a fee starting in October if the deal has not closed. Those fees add up to around $6.9 million per day, the company said recently. So then the UK is also getting involved. It's coming from the Wrap. The United Kingdom's Competition and Markets Authority has launched a formal Phase 1 investigation into the $110 billion Paramount Warner Brothers Discovery merger. Per a notice posted on its website on Tuesday, the CMA's investigation will begin on Wednesday. It will decide whether to refer the merger to a Phase 2 investigation by August 7th. So, you know, again, I'm not a businessman. I don't know much about mergers and acquisitions and whether or not the Paramount Warner Brothers merger will ultimately be deemed not okay and all that stuff. But I have seen, I especially remember with the Microsoft and Activision merger, that merger, it felt like it took like a year to litigate. At least that's what it felt like. Maybe I have that timeline wrong, but it felt like it took like a year for that to be litigated. If the states can like weigh down and delay this acquisition, the amount of money that Paramount is going to potentially end up having to pay Warner Brothers is pretty crazy. And I don't know. I could see it at some point becoming not financially feasible because Paramount already had to borrow money in order to do this in the first place. In order to buy this, Paramount had to borrow money. And I believe, again, I'm not the most knowledgeable person on this. I believe a lot of the other thing is that, or a lot of the money that they're using to sell to like the shareholders of Warner Brothers is like, I think what is it called, like valuation? Like, oh, we're gonna sell you stock of our company. But as this thing gets delayed, as Paramount just sheds more and more money trying to get this, how much is their stock actually going to be worth by the time this all goes through? I don't know. Like, I genuinely have no idea. But the only major point that I will make is that this whole thing is far from over. And there is, it seems like a very real possibility that it doesn't end up going through. But I'll leave it there because I'm not the most knowledgeable person about this. So there we go. All right, next story. We got an update on the Jimmy Olsen HBO show. It looks like we might have the title of the series. So this was posted on the Writers Guild of America website. Although, can I just be honest with you? One of the things that I try to do with this show is I always try to go to like primary sources. I don't normally just like look at a tweet. I looked all over the Writers Guild of America website and I just like couldn't find it. But like it's being reported on and talked about by like, outlets and websites. So I don't think that this is wrong, but I just thought I would say that. Like I normally wouldn't just look at a tweet and be like, oh, look at this. This is real. But anyways, it looks like the project is going to be titled American Villain. So, and it's under the genre of comedy. Now, the people that are making the show were the guys that made American Vandal. So it definitely makes you think, like, is this going to be a Jimmy Olsen show that is maybe somewhat of a mockumentary style thing where Jimmy Olsen is investigating, like, crimes, like supervillain related crimes? That's basically what I'm getting from this title, and that could be kind of awesome. So if you haven't seen American Vandal on Netflix, I watched the first season, and the first season is basically about this high school kid who is investigating the crime of somebody that keeps on drawing dicks around the high school. And what's so great about that series is that it is like the perfect balance of, this is a ridiculous nonsense situation and it's hilarious, and this is a mockumentary and we're doing this. But one of the things that makes it so funny and makes it so great is that it is completely dedicated to the bit, where they treat this with the utmost sincerity, and the actual journey that this kid goes on in trying to figure out who's drawing the dicks around the high school is legitimately engaging. And like you grow attached to the characters and the storylines. So if these guys can bring that to a Jimmy Olsen show, that could be very good. Like this, there are already a lot of people that are kind of against this because, and it's not that I don't understand why, because a lot of people are looking at projects like this and Supergirl and Clayface and they're like, but where's Batman and Wonder Woman and yada, yada, yada. And I get it, but at the end of the day, if a show's good, a show is good. And I'm not like, I like they're working on Batman and Wonder Woman. And if the American Vandal guys pitched a killer Jimmy Olsen show, I don't think that they should not do it arbitrarily just because they're still working on Batman and Wonder Woman. I guess I just fundamentally disagree with that mentality. But we'll see. We'll see how that ends up turning out. Next story. All right, next up, we have our big reveal for Scooby-Doo in Scooby-Doo Origins, the upcoming Netflix series. And they released a little teaser, so let's take a look at this. You're gonna wheel puppy. You're gonna wheel puppy. You're gonna boogie. So yeah, it seems like they are going to be using a live action dog in Scooby-Doo Origins. And I don't know, apparently that's like a I was reading an article where they were alluding to this being like controversial or something. I don't know, man. I don't go on Twitter anymore. And you know what? My life has been better for it, frankly. But for the article was talking about how some people were arguing that you want Scooby-Doo to have like cartoony facial features. And I guess I can understand that, but I don't know. I also don't care that much about it. Like I also think that having a live action dog could be cool. So I'm okay with it. The dog looks adorable. And I would assume that if the show continues and the dog like grows, maybe at some point they will add more CGI elements, or maybe even starting with this one, they'll use CGI to have more cartoony facial expressions. I don't know. I'm very much on I feel like we gotta wait and see. But as of right now, I think that dog looks adorable, and I'm curious about this Scooby-Doo show because on the one hand, a Scooby-Doo live action show, like, is Scooby-Doo necessarily something that resonates with kids today? And I do feel like there is a Scooby-Doo show that could be made that I think could resonate with modern audiences. Like, I think that if you made a Scooby-Doo show with a little bit of an edge, like a modern edge, kind of like, Wednesday. I haven't even seen Wednesday, but based on what I've seen of it, I feel like I can kind of get why it's as popular as it is, because Addams Family is obviously not relevant at all in today's day and age. But you get an actress like Jenna Ortega, you give it a little bit of an edge where it feels kind of cool and hip. I don't know. I feel like Scooby-Doo, there's the potential for that. I think if they make a Scooby-Doo in the vein of, I think it was the specific cartoon Scooby-Doo Mysteries Incorporated, if I remember watching that as a kid, where it was a little bit darker, it had a little bit more of an edge, took itself a little bit more seriously. I don't know. I could be totally wrong about this, but if Netflix show does this right, I think a Scooby-Doo live action Netflix series could be massive, but we'll have to wait and see. All right, next up, we have an update on The Last of Us Season 3. Apparently, filming has halted on the series. It says here, production kicked off on March 2nd, 2026, almost a year after Season 2 aired. I'm sorry, dude, that is... what? What are we doing? What are we doing with TV? TV used to come out every year. And you're telling me they didn't start filming Season 3 until a year after Season 2 aired? What? That's insane. I'm sorry, that's actually insane. Especially when you're adapting The Last of Us Part 2. Like, what I think one of the reasons why The Last of Us Season 2 isn't really is probably so frustrating for people. It's because you didn't even get the whole story. Because at least with the second game, you just play through the story, and yes, they make that very controversial choice, but you get to the end of the story and you understand what they're going for. Maybe it still didn't work for you, that's fine. But I couldn't even imagine experiencing this story in this way where it just stops halfway through and then I have to wait 3 years to see the rest of it. That's crazy. Anyways. Anyways, I'm just gonna keep. I'm gonna keep reading this. I forgot that bit was in there. That's fucking crazy to me. However, per a new announcement through the official British Columbia directory for productions currently taking place, HBO abruptly halted The Last of Us Season 3 filming without any details. But it might have something to do with the FIFA World Cup, which kicks off on June 11th and runs until July 19th. Canada will host 13 matches in Toronto and Vancouver. The show is under the working title Calm Current and is being filmed in Vancouver. Filming is expected to wrap on November 27th, but it has been halted from June 1st through June 28th. So it seems like that's a month off of production. I'm not the most knowledgeable guy on productions, but seems like a big deal. I don't know. We can't really say if that's ultimately going to lead to a massive delay, or if behind the scenes they're kind of just going like, we can just we can work some things around here and it won't actually lead to us delaying the game necessarily. But yeah, we'll just have to keep our eyes peeled and see how that all ends up. All right, next up, we were talking about Paramount earlier, and what the hell are they doing with Avatar? Like, this is the most mishandled franchise that I've seen in recent memory. Frankly, I feel like it might end up being up there with Star Wars at this point. Avatar: The Last Airbender AAA RPG announced in 2024 is dead. Awesome! Love it! Yes! The Avatar: The Last Airbender AAA RPG announced in 2024 is dead. IGN can confirm. Yes! Yes! We love this! In October 2024, IGN revealed plans for the first Avatar: The Last Airbender AAA RPG, which was set for development at Warhammer 40K Space Marine 2 maker Saber Interactive, with a 2027-2028 release window. Details were thin on the ground, but we were told the Avatar RPG was going to be the biggest video game in franchise history, and it would tell a new story in the universe developed in close collaboration with Avatar Studios. Wow, that sounds exciting! I'm glad we're not getting it now! With a working title of Ice Wars, the new Avatar RPG would have put players in the role of an all-new, never-before-seen Avatar, with a story taking place thousands of years in the past. At the time, Avatar owner Paramount and Saber said players can expect to be immersed in a vibrant world, master all 4 elements, engage in dynamic combat alongside companions, and experience the challenges and decisions that come with being the keeper of balance in the world. Wow, that sounds like so much fun! Saber Interactive has a proven track record in bringing IP-based games to life, and we are excited to co-fund this AAA title alongside them and let fans experience this world firsthand, Paramount said at the time. Great! So cool! Unfortunately, we didn't hear anything more of the project, and now, 2 years later, we have confirmation it's fallen by the wayside. Sean Kittleson, Senior Vice President, Head of Creative and Production at Paramount Game Studio, told IGN that the Avatar RPG wasn't in production when Paramount Game Studio, which unifies all Paramount and Skydance Gaming Studios, yada yada yada, was set up last fall after the Paramount Skydance merger. It's a similar situation to Embracer-owned studio Black Forest Games' Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles: The Last Ronin, which ceased development at some point before Skydance merged with Paramount, but the big difference here is Paramount Games decided to continue development of TMNT, opting to go with Platinum Games. For the Avatar RPG, Paramount Games decided against continuing the project. Okay. Yeah, awesome. Cool. Yes, 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 Kings. Yes, you're so good at your jobs. It is, however, publishing the recently delayed Avatar Legends, the fighting game. Yes, more anime fighting games. That's what we need. Yes, Kings. Yes. That's a project that wasn't in production when we came in, Kittleson told IGN of the Avatar RPG. We didn't start this iteration of Paramount Games until last fall, after the Paramount Skydance merger, so that game was not in production. There were a lot of aspirations previously at Paramount, but there wasn't necessarily the conviction or the support, and it wasn't a separate division, Kittleson continued. Games was a sub-department within consumer products. Now we are a business unit, and we're accountable for driving revenue and building games, and we have a larger team and more support behind us, including the fact that Skydance came with 2 game studios ready to play. So we're taking a different approach to games and wanting to see things through and make sure that anything that we announce, we're prepared to launch. Even with something like The Last Ronin that's earlier on, there is a deeper conviction and a larger investment being made in that title that we are going to ensure that we drive to launch. We are fully publishing that game and control all aspects of it alongside Platinum, and we've made sure that Platinum's as committed as we are to making it a reality. So that doesn't mean you won't get a AAA Avatar game at some point, but it might come in a different iteration. So here's what's interesting to me. I guess you can't fully blame the current Paramount. It seems like it was the Paramount from the past that started working on this with Saber Interactive, but even by the time the new Paramount came in and took over, it wasn't in production yet, so it wasn't all that far along. So in general, Paramount, whether it's the old regime or this new regime, like, they just can't get off of their asses and, like, do something cool with Avatar. That's what it seems like. Like, ever since I was a kid, Avatar video game. No fucking shit, Sherlock. That should be incredible. An open world Avatar RPG where you're playing as an avatar, you're making choices and consequences as the avatar, you know, you're learning the elements as, like, a gameplay progression. Like, that is the most obvious video game in the fucking universe. How have we not gotten a big budget Avatar game at this point? So, at least the light at the end of the tunnel that we can kind of maybe see here is that line at the end where the new person that's in charge of Paramount Games is saying, so that doesn't mean you won't get a AAA Avatar game at some point, but it might come in a different iteration. I guess I just wish that she would have at least said something like, we know the fans want an Avatar game, and we are committed to delivering that at some point. I would have taken that. I would have maybe taken that. The fact that they're like, well, maybe you'll get one at some point. We can't win. Okay? The Avatar movie isn't coming to theaters. It probably sucks. I don't know. If it doesn't, I don't know why the hell you're not putting it in theaters. The Netflix show is mid. Please, God, please, whatever that new show that the original creators are working on, please don't let that suck. I don't think I can handle it if that show sucks. All right, continuing with Paramount, I probably should have read this earlier in the show when we were discussing their merger, but there is actually another funny article that I wanted to read through where Paramount seems to be not coping well with all of the obstacles that they're facing. So, the title of this article is, Paramount accuses Netflix of panic-level scorched earth campaign to poison regulators against Warner Brothers deal. So let's read through this here. Paramount Skydance's top lawyer claims Netflix is so worried about the prospect of competing with a merged Paramount Warner Brothers Discovery that the streaming company is going all out to try to poison regulators and other stakeholders against the pending $111 billion deal. Makan Delrahim, Paramount's chief legal officer, has alleged that Netflix is lobbying hard against Paramount's proposed Warner Brothers Discovery deal. In a June 5th letter to lawyers in the DOJ's antitrust division, Delrahim wrote that Netflix's panic-level response and scorched earth campaign to try and poison regulators and other stakeholders against the transaction shows just how seriously Netflix takes Paramount as a scaled competitor. Delrahim was writing in response to the International Brotherhood of Teamsters white paper submitted to the Justice Department in March, in which the union urged the agency to block the Paramount WBD merger unless Paramount agreed to substantial and enforceable safeguards against job cuts and supporting increased U.S. production. So, this was a letter that was written by unions, not Netflix. So, I don't know what they're talking about. Unless they're alleging that it's like, it's all behind the scenes. Netflix is influencing people behind the scenes to not want to see the further consolidation of Hollywood. That's definitely something that Netflix needs to, like, everybody would love our our merger. If not for Netflix, it's like, no, everybody is already against this. Everybody would be against it if Netflix was winning. But yeah, people are, I guess, more against you than Netflix. But it's because if Netflix were to buy Warner Brothers, that would be Netflix getting into the theatrical distribution. So we wouldn't have less. It wouldn't be necessarily a consolidation of the theatrical industry. It would be Netflix taking on theater, distributing movies theatrically. So it's just like a different thing, right? Well, the streaming side of things is different, to be fair. But that's also the case with Paramount and Warner Brothers. Anyways, reading on. Apparently, Netflix's alleged scorched earth tactics here revolve around comparing the Paramount WBD merger to Disney's acquisition of 21st Century Fox assets in 2019, and warning that big studio mergers lead to lower content output and reduced competition in the industry. In his letter, Del Rahim wrote, "We understand that as part of its broader proxy war against the transaction, Netflix has tried to persuade the Teamsters and other stakeholders that Disney's acquisition of Fox had a negative impact on content production and labor opportunities. Frankly, Netflix's sky is falling narrative departs significantly from the ground truth reality of what actually happened." Del Rahim's letter, addressed to DOJ antitrust attorneys, yada yada yada. Asked for comment, a Netflix spokesperson told Variety, "These claims from Paramount Skydance are absurd. We walked away from the deal months ago and remained focused on our own business, not theirs. Ultimately, it's up to the regulators to approve this deal and determine if it's in the best interest of the industry and all concerned." So it's like, yeah, I don't know what Paramount is trying to do here. They're like, guys, it's Netflix's fault that people don't like us. What? People are against the merger on their own volition because of their own beliefs of, how the industry should work. It's not Netflix. It's just not. Anyways, it somehow gets even weirder. So last week, Del Rahim said in an interview with the Los Angeles Times that there's a lot of fear-mongering, particularly from people in Washington, D.C. They are running a political campaign. Some of these people are trying to inflict harm on this transaction, really, because of their own anti-Semitic views. Del Rahim has not identified which opponents of the Paramount WBD merger allegedly hold anti-Semitic views. What? Separately on Tuesday, the UK's competition regulator, this is where I got the whole UK thing from. Initially when I was preparing the show notes for this week. What are you talking about? What do you mean anti-Semitism? What does that have to do with people being against mergers and acquisitions and the loss of jobs and all of that? Listen, this is also goes to show why I think that the United States trying to sue, as well as the UK now doing their own investigation. This is honestly, that article is kind of why I think that all that stuff is going to cause real problems for the deal. Because clearly, Paramount is looking at all of this happening, and it is sending them into a weird schizophrenic rampage. Like, they're just like flailing, they're throwing shit at the wall. They're clearly nervous about all of this. Like, I think that this case could very well end up getting delayed by like a year. And the amount of money that they might end up needing to pay Warner Brothers on top of, what they're already paying could wind up being insurmountable. I think that's a very real possibility, but we will see. All right, next story. All right, so Spider-Man Brand New Day is coming out in like a month and a few weeks, I think, right? July something. I don't know. But what's interesting is that there is currently something Spider-Man related being filmed in London, right? Spider-Man Brand New Day, or Spider-Man, was spotted filming in London. Now, like, is it possible that they could be trying to film something for Spider-Man Brand New Day? It's definitely possible, right? This is Marvel. They obviously have massive budgets. They, if they really need something to be filmed, they'll do it, especially for Spider-Man. You know that this movie's going to make over $1 billion. Like, yeah, they'll work on this movie and do whatever they need to do right up until the last minute. But you also have to bring up the possibility of they could be filming this for Avengers Doomsday, right? Like, they could be doing a little cameo. Maybe they're filming a post-credit scene for Spider-Man Brand New Day that ends up leading into Avengers Doomsday or Secret Wars. This could be filming again for Doomsday or Secret Wars. Like, I don't know. I feel like we truly cannot say for certain, at this point, because it literally could be anything. But I did think I should bring it up because it is interesting, and we shall see. Because the other thing that should be mentioned is that as of right now, surprisingly, Spider-Man has not been announced to be in Avengers Doomsday. So that will, of course, be a big announcement to hear if Spider-Man is going to actually end up being in the movie or if they're saving him for Avengers Secret Wars. All right, next story. We got us a report coming from John Campea. He is a YouTuber, but, he has his sources. He's gotten stuff right in the past. So I think it's worth talking about. So we're just going to react to some of his segment here where he's talking about Dave Filoni apparently being against Star Wars Starfighter before it was being made. So let's just watch this video here.
You guys know for a long time that the word around, and I can tell you should probably take this to the bank, but Dave Filoni did not necessarily hate Andor, but he was certainly against it from all the stuff that we've heard. Because it wasn't his vision of Star Wars. And that has always made me really apprehensive about him being a president of Lucasfilm, because Andor is simply, period, end, stop, no discussion. It's the best thing Star Wars has ever done since the original trilogy.
Yeah, I mean, that is something that especially Christian Harloff has said a lot on his show, that he has his own sources saying that Dave Filoni is not a fan of Andor because, I don't know, for whatever nerdy, retarded thing that Star Wars purists feel it's not technically Star Wars. I could not care less. Andor, I'll go even farther than John Campea there. Andor is the best thing that Star Wars has ever done, period, end of story. Like, it's better than the original trilogy, the prequel trilogy, the sequel trilogy, whatever your retarded Timothy Zahn bullshit book is. I haven't read it, but I haven't read any of that shit. It's better than that, I'll say it. Yeah, Andor is incredible. So, hearing all of these reports and rumors that Dave Filoni looks at Andor and goes, that's not actually Star Wars. Whoa. I don't know that I want you to be in charge of the whole kit and caboodle if that's genuine, if those are genuinely your thoughts. Like, I'm not trying to be an asshole here, but Andor literally, like, Tony Gilroy, he owns you, little bro. Like, Andor is fucking a Google infinite whatever biggest number you can possibly think of times better than anything that Dave Filoni has ever done in his entire career. Like, the idea of Dave Filoni in the background being like, I don't like this very much. What? Anyways, back to what John is saying.
Not that everything should be like Andor, not at all. Star Wars should be a plethora of different things. But the Andor thing was the best thing they've ever done, at least in the Disney era. So I heard a little while ago, and I pushed it off to the side. I had heard a little something that I cannot independently confirm. Let me be clear about that. No other outlet should run a story saying, because I'm just telling you what I heard third hand. But this is
too late, John. I'm doing it anyways.
It's a discussion show. We're just a bunch of goofball friends sitting around talking about movies. So don't take this too seriously. I'm just telling you what I heard that I cannot independently confirm. But I had heard a little while ago, like less than 2 weeks ago, that Dave Filoni was adamantly against Starfighter. Didn't want Starfighter to get... Now, this was when Kathleen Kennedy was still president, okay? And I believe he was already he was already the CCO. And he was, from what I heard, was adamantly against Starfighter. Didn't think they should do it. Didn't think that was the direction they should go. Again, outside of what his vision of Star Wars is. Mm-hmm. Now, what I was told at the time was that Bob Iger and Kathleen Kennedy said, okay, we're going to do it anyway. We think this is the right thing to do. So they did it. Now, I never said anything about it because I just heard that from somebody connected, granted, but I just kind of filed that away. I was talking not too long ago now with another online film pundit who had kind of heard the same thing. I'm like, oh, okay, well, that's interesting. Still kept it filed away. But then yesterday, I heard from a prominent Hollywood person the exact same thing. And I thought, okay, this is interesting. And there's a reason why we say this one's going to be filed under the rumor mill. But let's go with this, talk about this for a second. Let's just for the moment, for the sake of the argument and the discussion, that Filoni was, and it's too late now, but Filoni was against the idea of Starfighter. It again makes me concerned about the future of Star Wars.
Okay, so he doesn't actually after this point he doesn't do any more reporting necessarily, like he doesn't give any more information. And so I leave this video asking a couple questions. Okay, he was against Starfighter. Why was he against Starfighter? I know they said that it's because it's not his vision of Star Wars. But did it go beyond that? Like, is it possible that Starfighter just, the script wasn't very good? Or is it like Andor, where the script is actually amazing, right? The show is amazing, but he's arbitrarily against it because of his own retarded lore reasons. Unfortunately, the latter does seem to be consistent with what's been reported with Andor. So we'll see, because I have my own reservations about Starfighter, because Sean Levy's just not a very good director, in my opinion. I mean, that's basically it. Like, you know, Free Guy is like, what? That's the mediocre Deadpool and Wolverine. Like, do you, like, obviously it made a lot of money, but is anybody going to look at me in my eyes and tell me with a straight face that you love Deadpool and Wolverine because of the incredible direction? I would argue that the direction is some of the weakest aspects of the film. Like, that film is basically carried by Ryan Reynolds and Hugh Jackman having good chemistry. So I have my own reservations about Starfighter, but if Dave Filoni is really going, if he is going to be going into his reign of Lucasfilm and being incredibly hardcore about his decision making based off of, like, well, this isn't actually Star Wars, and Star Wars needs to feel like George Lucas and the prequel era, and it needs to be Clone Wars, and this and that and the other, and blah, 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 blah. I mean, look, at the end of the day, as long as something is good, then I'm not necessarily going to care as much. But the unfortunate reality is that the Dave Filoni stuff hasn't been great. Like, I enjoyed the first 2 seasons of The Mandalorian well enough. Mandalorian Season 3 sucked. Book of Boba Fett sucked. Ahsoka, which Dave Filoni wrote and directed, was bad. Like, straight up bad. Mandalorian and Grogu is middling. Now, to be fair, I do think that, when I look at Dave Filoni's work on, like, the Mandalorian and Grogu, for example, I kind of get the vibe that that was also probably due to weird mandates from Disney. Because I find it hard that the guys that made the Mandalorian seasons 1 and 2, where they actually told a genuine story, then made the weird decisions to bring Grogu back in, bring Mando and Grogu back together in a separate show. And those guys then, like, the Mandalorian and Grogu, that's the movie that they wanted to make. Like, I do get the feeling that there was, like, a weird Disney mandate that stated that you literally cannot progress Grogu and Mando in any way, and that we just want to sell as many Mandalorian and Grogu plushies as possible. That is kind of the vibe that I get. That hasn't been reported anywhere, so I'm not saying that that's true necessarily, but that is the sort of vibe that I get. So it's interesting, like, what we can and can't theoretically give Dave Filoni kind of a pass on. And like they said, Maul Shadow Lord was pretty good as well. But yeah, it's just so even though you maybe want to give them a pass on some of the decisions that were made with the Mandalorian, because those seem like higher up executive decisions than just what Dave Filoni and Jon Favreau wanted to do. But then you hear those reports of him apparently not liking Andor. You hear these reports of him not liking Starfighter. And if Star Wars Starfighter comes out and it's like incredible, I guess I just hope that Dave Filoni is going to be able to... I hope that moving forward, he's going to be able to make decisions that aren't just what he thinks Star Wars should be, but what are good for the brand. Because, Andor, say what you will about it, it's like one of the only things that Disney Star Wars has going for it, right? If Star Wars Starfighter is good and it makes a profit, which it seems like Mandalorian and Grogu, which even though it was a budget Star Wars movie, it seems like it's going to flop. Like, hopefully Dave Filoni is capable of being like, hey man, look, I have my own vision of Star Wars, but moving forward, my main priority has to be getting great filmmakers to make great films. First and foremost, whatever my weird hangups are need to come second. That seems like what needs to happen, but we'll see what Dave Filoni ends up doing. All right, next story. So Paradise Lost was one of the series that was announced during that initial slate announcement that James Gunn did, where he announced a bunch of projects and a bunch of them haven't really come to fruition. It's almost like you probably shouldn't be doing that anymore, Marvel and DC. Just announcing a bunch of projects that don't end up coming out. But one of them that does seem to have some life into it is Paradise Lost. This was I guess a Wonder Woman prequel series that was supposed to be set on Themyscira, and it was supposed to be a Game of Thrones style show. Definitely sounds like a project with a lot of potential, and we now have some writers for it. So this is coming from an outlet called 3DVF. It says, while Superman and Batman race ahead with fresh outings, Wonder Woman's corner of the DC Universe has quietly flickered back to life. Writers Guild of America listings now pin Kira Snyder and Janet Lynn to Paradise Lost, the Themyscira set series, first unveiled in 2023 with a Game of Thrones style ambition. So, I'm honestly not familiar with these writers. If we just look through some of their projects, I kind of want to look at their writing credits. So Kira Snyder wrote for All Mankind, The Handmaid's Tales, Pacific Rim Uprising, The 100, Alphas, Eureka, Moonlight, Majestic. I mean, I don't know what a lot of these... I haven't seen any of these, but I've heard very good things about For All Mankind and The Handmaid's Tale, so she seems like probably a good writer. Then we have Janet Lynn, who, if we look at some of her writing credits, 56 Days... Bridgerton, Cursed, The Orville, The Night Shift, Of Kings and Prophets, Forever, Bones, Waterfront. Again, I'm not familiar with any of that stuff. The only thing that I've heard of is Bridgerton and The Orville, and I think those shows are good. I don't know. So, not exactly powerhouse writers, but it is just life being breathed into this project. And yeah, I'm going to be very curious about it. When we talk about Batman and Batman, for example, and people saying how come that you're doing this before Batman? That doesn't make any sense. You're making a Clayface movie before Batman movie. What are you doing? One of my main arguments against that is, well, they're working on Brave and the Bold, but it's allegedly a rough going project and it's taking them a while. And I can kind of understand that if you're actually doing the thing where you're trying to make a live-action Batman movie that is going on at the same time as the Robert Pattinson stuff. You're trying to make a movie that is very much a Batman movie. It has to feel like a Batman movie, but it also has to feel completely separate from and distinct from the Robert Pattinson Batman, so that audiences are willing to accept both of them at the same time. That seems like a very high bar. That seems like a very difficult thing to do. So I actually can't understand why that's taking a while. Wonder Woman, and by the way, that was announced as being worked on ever since James Gunn's initial slate. They didn't even have Wonder Woman announced during the initial slate. We now know that a Wonder Woman is being worked on, but it was very weird that it apparently wasn't being worked on initially. But even so, I understand the people's frustrations with them making a Paradise Lost show before Wonder Woman show. But at the end of the day, the concept of the show feels like it could be pretty cool, like a Game of Thrones style thing where you're on Themyscira. There's a lot of political intrigue and backstabbing and whatnot. Like, there's potential there. So I'm excited for it, or at least to learn more about it and see what it ends up being. And we know now that they are working on Wonder Woman. So, we shall see. All right, next up, we have a bunch of Batman stuff. So Colin Farrell has talked about about the nature of his role in the Batman Part 2. And it's a little interesting. So I have some stuff to say about this. Speaking with Collider's Steve Weintraub while promoting the upcoming return of his acclaimed Apple TV sci-fi noir series, Sugar, Farrell offered a new update on when he will return as the Penguin in the Batman Part 2. Asked when he would be putting the makeup back on for the Reeves sequel, Farrell said, "Filming is about to begin, though his own work will come a little later. They start, I think, in a week," Farrell said before asking, "Is there a plan for you to go over and see?" When Weintraub joked that he would pay someone to let him visit the set, Farrell added, "I don't have the power to charge such an invitation, but it'll be an amazing set to be on. The script, I've said before, and I said it to you, it's extraordinary. It really is. Matt is just so brilliant, and he cares so deeply about the stories he tells. I will fly to London in 4 or 5 weeks. I haven't got much to do on it, but I'll go for 4 or 5 weeks. I'll be there for a few weeks, and I'm so excited to see it as a fan." So it seems like the Penguin isn't actually going to have that much to do in the Batman Part 2. Which is, I don't know. I feel one of two ways about it. If it is the case that, Matt Reeves just doesn't involve the character in the story that he wants to tell, and if he just doesn't fit that much, then fair enough. But part of me does wonder, is part of the reason why we're not really getting a Penguin season 2, which we'll get to in when we talk about that later on in the show. Does some of that have to do with him not wanting to put on the makeup? Actually, you know what? This is completely related to this, so I'm just going to skip ahead here, actually. We're going to be reacting to a bunch of segments from the Hot Mic podcast where Jeff Snyder broke a bunch of stuff about the Batman Part 2. But here he specifically talks about Colin Farrell. So let's actually watch this real quick.
Well, in a second, I want to ask you about the other thing you mentioned in your article, the Penguin. You are speculating and you're saying that you're hearing that there will not be a season 2 of the Penguin series. It will stay a limited series. Is that correct? Are you confirming that? Or are you doubling down on that?
Yes, that is what I've heard, is that there won't be a season 2. I've heard that there might be a Poison Ivy show, potentially.
Wait, say that again. There might be what?
Sorry, hold on. We're skipping on ahead here more than I necessarily wanted to. Sorry. Stay with the Penguin. Wait, hold on. Actually, you know what? Let me keep going because he didn't even say the thing that I wanted him to say. Sorry. Listen, we're not a professional operation here.
I've heard that there might be a Poison Ivy show in the works.
Ooh.
I think that's a real possibility.
Any speculation who might be Poison Ivy?
No, nothing.
No. Okay.
I wouldn't even know who's writing the fucking show. I do think that they're probably trying to do something with Poison Ivy because she's a little goofy for a big screen character.
Yeah.
But I could see it working as a series, a little bit lower stakes. So, anyways.
Okay.
What was the question?
I was just asking you, why do you think that is? Why do you think they're keeping it to a limited series? Is it a Colin Farrell situation?
He's been open about not loving to do the makeup, right? He's only going to be in I'm told he's in 2 small scenes.
Right. For the movie, yeah.
I would have loved more of this, but the first season kind of worked perfectly, right?
You're right. Yes.
So yeah, that's what I wanted to get to. If it really is the case that that Colin Farrell doesn't like wearing the makeup, it's like, and this is something that I kind of felt when they initially cast Colin Farrell. As much as I like Colin Farrell in this role, why, like, what? Why not just cast a guy that looks like the Penguin? You know what I mean? Like, why not? Why did they even go with Colin Farrell in the first place? Like, why didn't they just cast somebody that's a little more portly, that looks more like the Penguin? It's just like, I don't know. It's like if somebody was making The Sopranos and they decided to cast Brad Pitt and make him wear a fat suit. It's like, why not just go out and get somebody like James Gandolfini? You know what I mean? So yeah, it's weird. It's weird. Like, and it's unfortunate because obviously the Penguin is an amazing character in these movies, and I'd like for him to be a bigger part in the movies, and I'd like for them to do more Penguin on TV if they have, the ambition and the desire to do it. But if the hang-up really is Colin Farrell not wanting to wear the makeup, that sucks. That just sucks. And it's a dumb thing that they brought on to themselves by casting somebody that doesn't really look like the role. You know what I mean? So we'll see. I guess I'll throw in the Poison Ivy thing here too. So a Poison Ivy HBO series set in the Matt Reeves Batman universe, presumably. That could be interesting. I mean, unless they're planning on introducing Poison Ivy in the Batman Part 2, that seems like that would be a show that is not originating from a movie, right? Because the Penguin is a spin-off. This would be a show that's sort of doing its own thing and creating its own lore and stuff. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know about that one, because obviously the Poison Ivy is a pretty fantastical character. It's like, would they have to like ground it in reality in some ways, where she's more of like somebody like mixing a drink in somebody's drink, or like mixing poison in somebody's drink? Or because Matt Reeves' stuff is obviously rooted in realism, so I don't know that Matt Reeves would go all the way and give her superpowers that in order to seduce people. It seems like she would just be like somebody that poisons people. So I don't know. I like, when it comes to the more fantastical characters like Poison Ivy, I just have no idea like how you would realistically do that in the Matt Reeves universe, and how far he's going to be willing to go. Because that's the other thing with the Matt Reeves stuff and the DCU Batman apparently being on screen at the same time. If I were doing it, I would be going to Matt Reeves and I would be telling him, hey bro, if you want to make a grounded universe, cool. You stick to your grounded universe and you make it as grounded as humanly possible. Because we over here in the DCU, we're going to have the fantastical Batman. We here in the DCU, we're going to do Poison Ivy, where she has Poison Ivy powers, and she's leading giant vine monsters and stuff to destroy Gotham City. We're going to have the Mr. Freeze, where, he's a giant guy in a big exoskeleton suit and he has a giant freeze gun. If Matt Reeves did Mr. Freeze, would he just be a guy that kills people and locks them in freezers or something like that? Like, it's like, I'm Mr. Freeze. I'm going to throw you in a freezer and lock the door. That's why I have the name Mr. Freeze. Like, how would he handle that? I don't know. So we'll see. I'm just so fascinated to get definitive answers on. Like, I'm not going to fully believe that we actually are going to have 2 live action Batman until I hear the news that somebody's been cast as Batman. I think once that day comes where they announce that somebody else is playing Batman, that isn't Robert Pattinson, that's the day that I think I'm going to really buy that they're going to go all in on this. And especially when that day comes, I'm just going to be very dubious about the idea of fantastical characters being a part of Matt Reeves' universe. I just don't know. I don't know. We'll see. Well, listen, we have way more stuff to get into regarding the Batman. So let's keep going here. Matt Reeves gave us the first shot. He says, #first shot, #the Batman Part 2. I'm assuming this is his cinematographer. Yeah. Here we go. So it's obviously very blurry. So yeah, by the way, this isn't the first shot of the film. It says this is scene 26. So this is from later on in the film, but this is what they're first doing, it seems. It seems like it's somebody on a table, like a dead body. Who knows what it is, but I think this is clearly establishing that the main villain of the Batman Part 2 is going to be another serial killer. Who could that serial killer be? We'll find out in a second. Probably. And yeah, so it is officially filming. I reported a couple weeks ago that I was like, oh, look, they're filming the Batman Part 2. It started filming. Apparently that was just that was just like test footage that they were doing. Now it seems like Matt Reeves is confirming that we are finally shooting scenes that are actually going to definitively end up in the movie. Well, I guess scenes could end up being cut, but you know what I mean. And it's exciting, man. Look, I absolutely love the Batman Part 2. Or the Batman Part 1. I love it. I love Robert Pattinson's Batman. Has it been frustrating that it's taken him 5 years to write the damn sequel? Yes. But we're here. And all is forgiven if this movie is amazing. So, we'll see. All right, let's get into the big stuff. We are back. We are back here with the Hot Mic podcast. And let's go back in time in this podcast. Because they are reporting that Jeff Snyder is reporting that Sebastian Stan, who has been reported as playing Harvey Dent Two-Face, Jeff Snyder is reporting that Sebastian Stan is actually playing Victor Zsasz. So let's hear what they have to say here.
I want to jump into the story. So let's get to it, Jeff. Victor, this is the situation here. You broke this news story yesterday, or this morning rather, on your newsletter here that you have received from 3 separate sources, it seems, from reading your breakdown of all of this, that Sebastian Stan is actually playing Victor Zsasz, who is a wealthy and successful businessman who lost his massive fortune after gambling against the Penguin in a high-stakes game. Devastated by loss of his wealth and his parents' debts, he attempts suicide, but when an attacker tries to rob him on the bridge he plans to jump from, Zsasz overpowers the man and kills him. He comes to view the act as a gift that spared the man, and he sets out to free people, quote-unquote, who no longer value their lives, much like Jigsaw in the Jaw franchise. I see the Saw franchise. I see what you did there. So, yeah, exactly. The Saw franchise, yes. But he's been played before. We saw, as you mentioned in your article, Chris Messina has played him in Birds of Prey. He popped up for a few seconds in Batman.
So, yeah, they go on to talk a bit about like the different live-action iterations. So, this is crazy, right? Like, other outlets, like big outlets like Variety and stuff, I believe have explicitly stated that Sebastian Stan is playing Two-Face. So this is like a wild left turn for this movie. But I kind of love it. Like, Sebastian Stan as Harvey Dent, sure. Like, I'm sure he would do a great job. But it's not quite felt right for me. Because it's like, is Matt Reeves really going to do Two-Face for his second movie as the main villain? When, I mean, he wasn't the main villain in The Dark Knight, but when Nolan already did Two-Face, like, that just, like, you could do it, and you could do different takes, and you could do it differently and all that. But still, I'm like, that just never felt right to me that Matt Reeves would want to do that. But Victor Zsasz and Sebastian Stan playing a serial killer like Victor Zsasz, who, if you don't know who Victor Zsasz is, yeah, like that. I remember him from, I'll be honest, my Victor Zsasz knowledge comes from Batman Arkham City. But yeah, like John Roca said there, he's a guy who gambled, who was a gambler, and he lost, I think, all of his money or something when he was gambling with the Penguin. I believe that I specifically remember that from the Arkham City when he's giving you his origin story. And so that would then explain what Penguin's role in the movie is going to end up being. And then, he loses all of his money or something, and then he becomes a serial killer. But the creepy thing about him is that, yeah, he believes that when he kills somebody, he's like freeing them from life. So in his like warped mind, he's like altruistic. And the other creepy thing about him is that when he kills somebody, he like cuts himself and leaves a mark. So he's a very creepy character. And the idea of Sebastian Stan playing like a creepy character like that, it kind of rules. I kind of love that. Like, again, Sebastian Stan as Harvey Dent, sure. Yeah, great. Like that sounds like it would probably be awesome too. But Sebastian Stan as Victor Zsasz sounds almost cooler, to be honest with you. And then he also provides an interesting update on who Scarlett Johansson and Charles Dance are going to be playing. So let's look at this here.
And they wouldn't give up the roles for Johansson or Dance, other than they said, they're like a meld of characters. They're not necessarily like anybody huge in the Batman universe. Because obviously there's a lot of speculation about Andrea Beaumont and the Phantasm.
Right.
I was personally thinking of this character, Samantha Vanaver.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
And maybe her. So, like,
yeah,
I've heard that the Court of Owls was going to be a part of this as well.
Yes.
But, like, the truth is, I don't know who they're playing, but what I'd heard was that Brian Tyree Henry was going to be Two-Face. And
okay, we'll get to that in a minute. So interesting. So he's also hearing that Court of Owls is going to be a part of this, and that Scarlett Johansson and Charles Dance are going to be a meld of different characters. Because people have been predicting, like, oh, could Scarlett Johansson be playing Gilda Dent? Who has some interesting things about that character when you look at, like, The Long Halloween, which I don't know how much I want to speculate on that. I don't know how much of this is going to be considered spoilery if it ends up being big things in the movie, but Gilda Dent is a very interesting character, for sure, for Scarlett Johansson to be playing. But then, she could also be the Phantasm, because she kind of looks like Andrea Beaumont or whatever. And then Charles Dance, people have been predicting, is he going to be playing Harvey Dent's dad? Whatever Dent's dad's name is. Well, maybe not. When we look at who's playing Two-Face, although adoption is a thing, mixed race people are a thing, but that kind of seems less likely now. So very, very interesting developments. Now, the other sticking point for me is Court of Owls. That also just doesn't feel right to me, if I'm being honest. Kind of like how I was talking about the Two-Face thing doesn't feel right to me. Doing Court of Owls, like, why would Matt Reeves want to do that? I mean, obviously he would want to do it because the Court of Owls are pretty cool, but you already did the big twist in your last movie that, there's a shady organization that's actually running Gotham City. It was actually Carmine Falcone that was running Gotham City, and that was corrupting the police department and all of that. Is the twist for the Batman Part 2 really just going to be the same thing again? Actually, there was an even more secretive organization that was pulling the strings in Gotham City the whole time. It's like, that just doesn't feel right for where Matt Reeves would take the sequel. So I don't know. And then you also have to factor in the whole, fantastical nature of it all. Like, if you don't know, the Court of Owls in the comic books, they're like more mystical, and they have like zombie soldiers and stuff like that. And it's like, frankly, if we're going to get a Court of Owls in live action, I would much rather that be in the DCU, where they would actually be able to properly adapt it and not, fucking Christopher Nolan and Matt Reeves bullshit where they're like, actually, Bane, he doesn't have venom and he's not a big hulking venom monster. He has asthma. He has a thing on his face and he's just a guy with asthma. It's like, I don't know. I'm being honest. As much as I love Matt Reeves, I don't know that I even really want to see his version of the Court of Owls. But anyways, let's get into the next big casting.
I heard was that Brian Tyree Henry was going to be Two-Face. And personally, as soon as he was cast, it's kind of what I thought. That was my assumption on day one, which I made to the person. And remember, we talked about it in depth on this podcast and why I was like curious because some of the reactions like threw me off.
Yeah.
To me, he's a much more interesting Two-Face. And Zsasz is a much more interesting role for Sebastian Stan. Like we've seen.
Sorry. Okay. I don't want them to just make my points for me. Yeah. Like if you're going to do Two-Face in your second Batman movie, which is already going in on sort of Christopher Nolan's territory where he did that so well, I would want to go in a significantly different direction. Like Brian Tyree Henry as Two-Face, that would be a radically different just performance. That would be a radically different vibe. That to me seems much more interesting and much more unique from what, Christopher Nolan already did. And it's just like, people are going to be like, oh, race swap. I mean, first of all, I genuinely could not imagine caring about like things like race swaps or not being like faithful to the source material for a character like Batman. How many iterations of Batman have we had at this point? From the comic books to the video games to the cartoons to the movies to the radio dramas. Like, dude, Matt Reeves could have made Batman a Japanese trans woman, and I genuinely would not have cared. I genuinely could not have possibly cared less because of how much Batman media we already have. So first of all, I genuinely could not care less about race swapping in a Batman movie moving forward. I don't. I'm sorry. Even more than that, there have been race swaps in Batman media since like the 1960s. So unless you're against the Adam West Batman series where they had Eartha Kitt as Catwoman, unless you're against the 1987 1989 Batman movie with Tim Burton where he had Billy D. Williams playing Harvey Dent. In The Dark Knight Rises, they race swapped Bane because Bane is supposed to be Hispanic. They cast a white dude in Tom Hardy. So, like, there have been so many race swaps in Batman media that, like, unless you literally hate, unless you're against literally every single Batman franchise, maybe except for the Snyderverse, maybe. I'm trying to think. I don't think so. Anyways, they cast a non-human as Joker, so there you go. They cast a lizard person as the Joker in that franchise. Unless you're just against literally every single iteration of Batman ever of all time, live action, I mean, then you should have no issues with Brian Tyree Henry as Two-Face. This is literally not in any way, shape, or form against literally how every single live action version of this character has been handled ever in the history of all media, or of live action media. So yeah, I can't even imagine caring about the whole race swap of it all. I think Brian Tyree Henry is a fucking awesome actor. He's fucking fantastic. And I would love to see, like, again, I'd love to see him play a character like Harvey Dent. I'd love to see what he brings to that. I'd love to see him doing Two-Face. Like, again, like Jeff was about to go on to say, these are so much more interesting roles for these two actors than what was initially being predicted. So yeah, I think all of this casting is really exciting. I think the characters that these people could be playing are really exciting. And I think the Batman Part 2 is shaping up to be just an awesome, awesome movie. I will say, I don't know, this is, do I even go into this? I just think this is weird. You know what? I was about to go into something else. I was about to call somebody out. I decided I don't care enough. But no, I think this looks awesome. But yeah, let me know what you think in the comments down below. All right, last story of the day. This is coming from Puck, being reported by Matt Bellany. It looks like George Miller is shopping around the next version, or the next Mad Max movie, which I'll be honest, I didn't think that we were going to get. And to be fair, we still might not ever get. But there is some life potentially. So this is what he says. Who wants to make Mad Max 6? George Miller was just in town meeting with studios about a new Mad Max movie. The 81-year-old Australian auteur is said to have generated interest from at least Amazon, Universal, and Sony Pictures, and according to one source familiar, Miller is saying he would like to make one last Mad Max pick, then a TV series, then sell the whole property to the highest bidder. That's something that I actually didn't know. I did not know that that George Miller owned Mad Max. That's pretty cool. Well, I guess he's wanting to sell it at this point, but you know, then it'll just be another IP that somebody owns. But you know, for now, it's pretty cool. Interesting that Warner Brothers is not in the mix here. Warner's has been involved in distributing all 5 previous Mad Max movies, but that includes 2024's Furiosa, which is awesome. And you know what? Can I just say this here? Anyways, actually, I'll finish reading this. Which grossed just $175 million worldwide, but about what it cost to produce. Miller visited the Burbank lot, but WB's film and TV divisions both passed, I'm told. Can we just stop? Can we just acknowledge that the general movie-going audience sucks? You guys carried the You Are Mr. Gay dogshit Mario movie, Galaxy movie, to over $1 billion, and you could only get Furiosa to $175 million? Why did I choose to compare these two movies when they're completely different and one is for families and one isn't? I don't know, but I don't care. I'm doing it anyways. You guys watch the most dog shit movies of all time. You make them successes. And then George Miller delivers you peak cinema on a plate in Furiosa and you go, nah, I'm good. I don't need it. I don't need to watch that. You guys suck. Anyways, I honestly thought the franchise was dead in the water. I assumed that Warner Brothers owned it and that, well, we own it. We're not going to let anybody else make it. But the Furiosa bombed, and Mad Max Fury Road already wasn't like particularly successful either, so we're probably not going to make any more of these. I'm actually super excited now that theoretically Amazon, Universal, or Sony could do it. My guess is that Amazon will do it because they have money and I could see them. I mean, this would be not the ideal scenario, but I could see them doing like a streaming movie. But I don't know, they seem to be more at this point eager to just make movies with absurd budgets, even though they're probably not going to end up making a ton of money. They very stupidly made a $200 million Masters of the Universe movie, which is completely flailing at the box office right now. So I could honestly see them doing it. It'd be like, sure, George Miller, here's money. Go make it. Who cares? But yeah. I just really love these movies. I want George Miller to finish his vision and then ride off into the sunset and retire and, be a happy little Australian man. But anyways, that's going to be it for this episode of Nerdy Movie News Roundup. This is the show where we round up all of the latest news in the world of nerdy movies, and they have officially been round up. So let me know what you think about any and all of these topics in the comments down below, and I will see you in the next video. A goodbye, a goodbye, a goodbye.